May 10th, Father Damien.
Whatever you've got to give it freely, give it often, give it all. In 1866, the Hawaiian government forced everyone with leprosy to move to the remote island of Molokai. The place became a colony of lepers, forgotten and herded together like cattle with mad cow disease. Life on the island was thick with hopelessness. The people suffering from this nerve-killing disease knew death would take them, so mortality just didn't matter. The island turned lawless and brutal. The strong overpowered the weak, and the women and children were often horribly mistreated. Into this abyss of suffering, Father Damien wanted to come and serve. He had already spent 9 years in Hawaii trying to get permission before he was finally allowed to go to Molokai. By the time he arrived, things had gotten so bad that all the men and women with leprosy thought of themselves as less than human. They believed the lie that they were not worthy of love. Father Damien began to give the lepers all he had. At first, Father Damien looked down on the lepers, but he soon discovered that a leper's awful self-concept could be changed. These people who nobody would dare touch needed Father Damien's healing hand. The conditions were so bad that as he walked the island, Damien noticed the dead were everywhere, and they were treated as trash. The rotting bodies on the ground gave off a repulsive odor, and he realized that for the lepers to have dignity in their lives, they had to have dignity in their deaths. So he established a decent cemetery and burial procedures. Over time, he talked about the lepers he worked with as his sons and daughters. Father Damien became part of their community. He touched the lepers often, even though his supervisors in the church told him not to. He hugged his sons and daughters and kissed them. He bathed their wounds. He put his thumb on their foreheads and blessed them. Father Damien knew that in order to touch their souls, he had to touch their bodies. One day, Father Damien filled a bucket with hot water to wash his feet. When he lowered his feet into the water, he felt no heat. He knew this meant he had contracted the disease. In one of his last letters to his brother in Europe, he wrote, "I make myself a leper with the lepers to gain all to Jesus Christ. That is why in preaching I say, we lepers." The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." Today, as we hear this story about great sacrifice, what sacrifice are you willing to make? Are you willing to pray and ask God to give you an assignment to serve those who believe they are not worthy of love? Whatever you've got to give it freely, give it often, give it all.
Hello friends, I'm Blake Maddox and it is May the 10th, and today our story is about Father Damien. And more importantly, it's a story about Father Damien and the sacrifices that he made. I find it interesting that today's story is about a man who ministered to lepers on the Hawaiian island called Molokai. I remember many years ago when in the Marine Corps training on that island, and I had no idea back then as I walked that island that that was a leper colony and that this is where our story takes place. So Father Damien made the commitment to go and minister to lepers on an island that they were banned to because on the other Hawaiian islands they didn't want the disease of leprosy to spread. So this colony of people, this group of people was labeled in such a way that they were living on an island. And it's an incredible story about a man who made the sacrifices necessary to get out of his own way and his own comfort zone to be able to minister to people that God loved. Ultimately, the end of his life was that of dying to the disease that he went to minister to people who had the disease. I can't even imagine how difficult. But it really challenged me on a lot of levels. It may be that God calls us to go somewhere where nobody else is willing to go, to do things that nobody else is willing to do. And in that and through that, God can change our hearts, first of all, to love those that God loves, and then secondly, to minister the love of God to people who may not have ever experienced it. So my challenge is, what is God saying to you about stretching you and bringing you to a place in your life where He wants you to do something maybe nobody else is willing to do? And what will that look like when we step out in faith and say, God, here I am, send me. God bless you. Have a great day.